Hello and happy, beautiful day to you. Welcome to today's quick IQ episode where we talk about insights and questions. And on today's IQ episode, I want to share with you a very profound insight that can help you to get even more clarity on the healing process. Now, by the way, one of the reasons that I always want to talk about insights and questions, the IQ episode, is because the distinctions that seem small were everything. The more I gained clarity as to what I needed to do and the details of it, the specifics were pivotal. It was breakthrough. That's what literally enabled me to heal myself. That is what has enabled me to show others how to heal and even show results under medical equipment were the details. Now, for some people, they may seem small, but when you really master something, they're crucial. Like, for example, if you're typing on the keyboard, there's a big difference between the enter key and the space bar. But, if you're just learning a computer, you might think, oh, that's just a small little change. Or if you're working in interior design, there's a big difference between the color red or, a fuchsia or a purple. There's differences. Or playing an instrument. There's a big difference between the C note and a B note, or a B even in a B flat. It's a big difference when you really master something. And when we master something, we learn how to really use it. That's when it becomes pivotal in our lives. And so that said, on today's IQ episode, the insight that I want to share with you is this, is that the distinction is that, likely by now, if you've been working on healing yourself or changing your life, you've heard the phrasing before. We hear all the time, change your story, change your life. Now, to me, you have to go beyond the story. It's not just the story. And this is what I mean, is that patterns breed more of the same, right? So if we ground this for a moment and we look in psychology, we know that patterns can repeat. It's called repetition compulsion, reenactments, attachment theory, law of attraction, revictimization. It's got so many different names because we can see evidence of this. Or if we just keep it simple, we can say, unfortunately, a woman with an abusive father could leave him and find the abusive boyfriend, boss, spouse, etc. That pattern can continue. And of course, it's not everybody. Depends on how it gets linked up in the mind and the energy. Or we could say that somebody, unfortunately, might have a pattern of rejection or hurt or abandonment, right? So patterns breed more of the same. Now, if we think about just changing the story, I've seen people before who might say something like, maybe they had a father who was really angry growing up. And so they had that experience. And then maybe as their father got older and wiser and grew and got rid of the patterns, maybe they've created a wonderful relationship and they've bonded, but now that pattern is repeating in somebody else, in some other situation. Maybe it's their boss, maybe it's a friend, maybe it is their current spouse, because that pattern can continue in other places. And once the situation starts, those patterns can show up and it's tricky. Now, part of the reason this is coming up is if you think about the last episode where I worked with our beautiful volunteer on episode 253. And if you think about it, her name is Kahiso. But as I was working with her, she said, well, this is the story of my life, basically, is I'm always feeling hurt or judged and criticized, and I went against the grain here and here and here. And the thing of it is, what you'll notice is the story was so different in each situation. Like one had to do with college, and another one had to do with spirituality, and another one had to do with, there were just all of these different situations. And so the problem is that if you change the story, you didn't really get anywhere because the story was just another version of the pattern in a different way. Meaning, to say this another way, somebody might have a story of feeling rejected by their father or abandoned by their father, but then they might change that story, but the pattern's already in motion, and the pattern can show up then with their ex that also did the same, and then or a friend or whatnot. So the pattern. So whenever we have a story in life, we can't just say, well, let me change the story. We have to say, what is the patterning behind the story? Now, if you think about it for a moment, That is exactly what happened on the last podcast episode. As you recall, if you listen to that episode on 253, the volunteer, just a beautiful being, was very stuck. So I was pushing quite a bit, to just see in a different way, to feel in a different way. But her mind kept going back into the negative, a different story, and another story, and another story, that were all part of the same pattern. And even when I said, I said to her, because there was a part of her who used to feel left out because of spirituality, and she said, no, that's changing, which was great. The story around that was changing, but the pattern then switched to her health. And so that's exactly the point, is I see people all the time who feel like they're changing their story, but then this issue and then this issue, because we have to really address the pattern. And another way to think about it is like this, is that, if you think about the woman with the abusive father who leaves him and finds the abusive boyfriend, boss, spouse, etc., that can continue. And it's not like the next person looks the same. The feeling is the same. And by the way, I've worked with people before in that scenario. And just, I have so much compassion, because it's a hard pattern. But even one person that I worked with who had done exactly that, like she went through this abuse with her father and basically moved away from him, then ended up in an abusive relationship with a boyfriend, boss, spouse, all of the things. Then changed her story, had worked on herself, all of these things, but didn't really change the pattern. She still felt this way at a deeper level, like to the point where she said, I just don't want to date anymore, which means that she didn't really change the pattern. The emotions were still there. She was just like, I just don't trust it. Like, I've changed the story. And her father had actually, he had been through all kinds of rehabilitation. They were great. So she changed her story towards her dad to be more loving. She changed. But inside, that pattern was still there at a deeper level. And it was all of these different stories. The story towards the ex. So it was a bigger picture of a bunch of stories, which was a pattern. So point being, in that situation is that ultimately what also ended up happening is then her son ended up then being diagnosed bipolar, and he would start hitting her, and then he would go on medication and then go off of it and not take his medication. And that was his pattern, is he started doing exactly that. So in other words, now it was another new story. It was the story of the dad, and then the story of the ex, and then the story of the boss, and then the story of the son. And the problem is there was a bigger pattern to it. And so we have to remember to look beyond the story. Now, why this is also helpful is that, as you recall, on the last few IQ episodes, we've been talking about going into the emotion. And I hear more and more people say that when an emotion comes up, that you want to go into it. But you won't want to do that. And we talked about all of the reasons why you don't want to do that. And just kind of, if you missed those episodes, long story short, even under medical equipment, I've seen people, when they bring back in the negative emotion, even just for a moment, that it can bring the pain back up. And so that's the reason I don't recommend it. Even in the medical journal where I've had case studies published, I've documented that very thing, that somebody goes back into the negative, their pain can go back up. The problem can come back up. I've seen it in blood sugar and blood pressure and all kinds of things where it can spike pain, all kinds of things. So I don't recommend going into the negative. But further, we can also see the reason for that. Like, even if we think about the last episode, and if you haven't listened to the last episode, I strongly recommend listening to that, episode 253. But exactly that, is that she was very stuck in the pattern and stuck. So I was pushing her because she was very, very, very stuck. And she just had this profound breakthrough. She goes, oh my gosh, you cracked me open. I get it. And even at the very end, she said, wow, I can't believe, just this awareness of itself, because she was stuck in the pattern with one story after another that she had been changing and trying to change, and not realizing that there was a bigger pattern. And so that is the key. Now, if we think about this as it relates to health, how you could think about it is this, is that emotions affect the physical body. So let's say, for example, that somebody has a pattern of feeling anxiety. They have that pattern of feeling anxiety, a pattern of feeling anxiety, a pattern of feeling anxiety. Of course, they could have panic attacks. They could have panic attacks, right? Because they're feeling a patterned way of thinking and feeling. Well, other emotions affect the body as well. So if we have a patterned way of thinking and feeling, a patterned way of thinking and feeling, and that emotional combination is affecting the body, then we have to get out of not just the story, but the patterned way of thinking and feeling and thinking and feeling and thinking and feeling. That is the key. So a lot of times, again, people will ask me, what are the key distinctions that really separate what I do and how I work, and why do I get such different results? Because of that. I don't just go after the story or changing the story or the trauma. The key is the patterned way of thinking and feeling. So that's what we want to do, is go beyond that. And that's something that, the gift method, it's my method. That's something that sets it apart, is we really want to think in terms of patterning the positive, patterning the negative, and getting rid of the patterning. And so that is the key. And so I want to invite you to think in that way. And then now also, when you think about in that way, the patterned way of thinking and feeling and thinking and feeling, you can see also the reason you don't want to just sit with a negative emotion, because just sitting with a negative emotion may allow you to feel more comfortable with it at the time, but that's not going to change the patterned way of thinking and feeling and thinking and feeling. We must repattern the mind. And so one way you can see that is you can really see that on last episode 253. Also, on this next episode coming up, we have a beautiful volunteer. I just wrapped up with her, and just her courage to change, her self-awareness, her heart, her kindness, her being, and also just the awarenesses that come from the next episode, and just the courage it can sometimes take to change when we don't even realize it, is what's coming up on the next episode. So, but you'll be able to see patterned ways of thinking and feeling. And again, why not to not just sit with the emotion, but we really need to make a radical transformation. So, and we need to look at the bigger picture and the bigger patterning, not just the story, but look bigger. And that is another key as well. So again, key distinctions may seem small, but the more you want to master something, mastering a guitar, the C string is different from the D or the G, those little details are pivotal. And so that's today's insight. And so from this, I want to invite you to think about, if you have a bunch of stories in your life, story of hurt or story of this or story of that, what is the bigger pattern? What is the patterning? And transforming that, because when we really rewire the subconscious mind to create a shift, it's powerful. Now, the other thing I'm going to say is this, is that if you're already not lifting your emotions, be careful. Don't go into the negative. So the goal is to observe and not go into it. Just like if we go back to 253, when it came to, there was some fears. And I asked our volunteer, wait, don't go into the fears. I don't want you to go into fear. It's not going to be helpful, and even to expand on that further. Let's be honest. If somebody's in fear or they're sitting with an emotion of fear, how easy is it to talk to somebody who's pushing themselves into fear and sitting with fear, compared to mental clarity if somebody's not sitting in the fear and just sitting with the emotion? So your mental clarity will also be better, so you can access more of your genius. It's ultimately what I call it. When you have clarity, the more you go into the emotion itself, the more you lose that clarity, but the more you're outside of it, then you can observe. And so observing the patterns and being able to transform them is key. So just, again, a lot of just different insights where you can start to see with even more clarity the changes. And what's beautiful is that when you really make the changes to the bigger picture patterns, that's when it becomes pivotal. And that's what Heal Yourself, Change Your Life is all about, is changing your life, is understanding the healing, the patterns that are required to heal, and then really, really changing those. So that is the key. And as always, I want to ask you to please do take a quick moment to hit the share button on this episode. Share it with somebody you love, somebody you care about, or somebody you don't even know, because the more empowered that every single person is in our world, the better this world is for all of us. So the more every single person is happy and healthy and loved and loving and enlightened and aware of their mind and the power of the mind and healing and self, it's incredible. So please do hit the share button, and please do make a point to have a most wonderful, incredible rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. It's really, it's very heart-touching. So I look forward to seeing you there. Have an incredible rest of your day. Thank you for listening to Heal Yourself, Change Your Life. All of the time, people reach out and say how much these episodes have given them hope or touched their heart or helped them stay positive in hard times or even woken them up to a completely new level of awareness of how amazing we all really are. If today's episode touched your heart or expanded your mind in any way, please do me a favor and be sure to share it with those you care about or those you know who really need it. As more and more people become empowered, it really will change our world for the better. That is the point and the power of these demonstrations, is to create a radical shift in our world consciousness by showing everyone what we are all capable of. And of course, each volunteer will really need to follow through to reinforce their programming to maintain their results. But the point is for you to see that you really can create rapid results in your health and your life if you really understand how to use your mind. You're incredible. And I do want to be clear, though, that most people will not get results this fast on their own. I make it look very easy because of the discoveries that I made. You'll want to remember that there's so much more going on in our minds at a deeper level than people realize. That said, if you want to send me any questions or comments, come visit me on my website at BrandyGillmore.com/podcast. And if you're currently experiencing physical pain and would like to be a volunteer on the show, you can sign up there as well. Lastly, please remember, if you do have any health issues, you won't want to avoid your doctors. Instead, you'll want to continue seeing them and make it your goal to blow their minds with what you're capable of with your mind. Thank you.